John Calvin on Psalm 14, verse 7. Oh, that the salvation of Israel were come out of Zion! When the Lord bringeth back the captivity of his people, Jacob shall rejoice, and Israel shall be glad. Who shall give salvation to Israel out of Zion? David, after having laid down the doctrine of consolation, again returns to prayers and groanings. By this he teaches us that although God may leave us for a long time to languish, yet we ought not to weary or lose courage, but should always glory in him. And again, that while our troubles continue, the most effectual solace we can have is often to return to the exercise of prayer. By the word Zion, which he adds, he testifies that his hope is fixed on God, for Zion was the holy place from which God had promised to hear the prayers of his servants, and it was the dwelling place of the Ark of the Covenant, which was an external pledge and symbol of the presence of God. He does not, therefore, doubt who would be the author of his salvation, but he asks with a sorrowful heart when at length that salvation will come forth, which is to be expected from no other source than from God alone. By expressing his desire for the deliverance of Israel, we are taught that he was chiefly anxious about the welfare of the whole body of the church, and that his thoughts were more occupied about this than about himself individually. While our attention is engrossed with our own particular sorrows, we are in danger of almost entirely neglecting the welfare of our brethren. And yet the particular afflictions with which God visits each of us are intended to admonish us to direct our attention and care to the whole body of the church, and to think of its necessities, just as we see David here, including Israel, with himself. David concludes that God will not suffer the faithful to languish under continual sorrow in Psalm 126, verse 5. That they that sow in tears shall reap in joy. He doubtlessly aims at confirming and encouraging himself and all the godly to hope for the promised deliverance. The captivity, of which he makes mention here, refers to an oppression at home, when the wicked exercise dominion like tyrants in the church. We are therefore taught by these words that when such furious enemies waste and destroy the flock of God, or proudly tread it underfoot, we ought to have recourse to God, whose particular office it is to gather together his Israel from all places whither they have been dispersed.